my PowerPoint?
Yes,
Yes
Doc.
po, Doc.
Po, Doc.
Okay, thank you very much. So, again, welcome back to BPHE 33, Zoonoses, EIDs, and One Health. So for today, we're going to cover three topics. No, so first would be prevention and control of zoonoses. Okay, and then next would be emerging infectious diseases and One Health, and lastly, we have yung drivers no of emerging infectious diseases. Okay. Okay, wait lang. Okay, so our objective for this lecture, no, would be number one, determine the different ways on how we can prevent occurrence of zoonotic diseases, and second, identify different procedures in controlling zoonotic diseases. Okay, so from our first lecture, no, we have discussed about plague, no, and from the video that I have posted, no, it says that during those times no, na nagkaroon ng pandemic or outbreak ng plague in Europe, okay? Nahirapan sila on how to treat, how to control, and how to prevent diseases such as this one, no? Yung plague kasi nga it's an emerging infectious disease, it's a new disease in their country, no, or in their area. No, but later on, no, they have studied kung ano yung nakakapag-transmit, okay, what are the hosts responsible for the transmission of plague. No, and of course, we also had the developments in the different aspects, no, in different fields like microbiology, in medicine, and even in sanitation. And this has been instrumental in the prevention no, of future plague pandemics. Kahit ngayon, no, ngayong during these times. Okay, so ano nga ba yung mga preventive measures when it comes to plague? So number one, of course, we have to reduce rodent habitats around our home, workplace, or even other areas like recreational areas. Any areas that can be or that can favor no yung rodent populations. Okay. Number two, no, we can also prevent plague by wearing gloves, okay, or wearing PPEs in general, especially if you're handling or skinning potentially infected animals. To prevent, this can prevent no contact between your skin and the causative agent of plague. Okay, so this is highly or it's recommended for everyone, but more especially sa mga animal handlers, no, like the veterinarians, mga laboratory personnel, etc. Okay, and then number three, of course, another thing that you have to know is to look for the hosts no or the vectors for this aside from the rats no. So syempre we also have yung mga fleas, rodent fleas specifically which can transmit this disease no. So we can use repellents no or mga flea control products in order to prevent yung transmission ng mga um ng disease na to. Okay? And then lastly, of course, we also have to check our pets, no? Our dogs and cats. We should not allow them to roam freely in endemic areas, no? And kung may fleas sila, we should treat them first, no? Especially kapag close tayo sa mga dogs and cats natin na pinapatulog natin sila sa mga kama natin, then kapag mayroong pulgas, mas mabuting gamutin natin, no? We treat yung fleas nila. Okay? So, a plague vaccine is no longer available in the United States, no? But new plague vaccines are under development. Okay? But hindi pa siya commercially available. Maybe in the near future. Okay? So, that's another thing, no? Kapag dating sa mga zoonotic diseases, thankfully we have vaccines available. Okay? Right, so we have three things not to keep in mind here in this lecture. No, we have the prevention, eradication, and control. So these are interrelated to each other. No, but before that, Kasi baka nalilito yung iba na prevention and control parang iisa lang ang meaning, no? Parang um, it's just one word, no? They're just synonymous with each other, no? But it's not. They're not synonymous with each other. No? They have different definitions. Okay. So first, let's talk about prevention. Okay. So this would be talking about how we can prevent or inhibit yung introduction of a disease, no, into an area or population. Kasi when we say control, these are measures taken to reduce a disease problem, no? We reduce yung kanyang we reduce a disease problem to a tolerable level and we maintain it at that level. Okay? So yung prevention is we inhibit or we stop the entry, no, of a disease agent into an area or into a population. So we can grade yung prevention, no? Number one, it can be primary, no? So this would be aimed at maintaining a healthy population, okay? Preventing the occurrence of diseases. We have secondary prevention. So we attempt to minimize damage after the disease occurred. And then tertiary prevention, okay? Kapag hindi na nagkaroon ng effect, no? If you did not have a successful primary or secondary prevention, then that's when you are going to have your tertiary prevention. Okay? Right. Next would be control. Yeah. So the term control, no, is more appropriate, no, when a given infectious disease agent is already present. So kumbaga prevention would be more of futuristic or anticipating measures, no. But when it comes to control, the disease is already there, no. So you want to reduce that disease into a tolerable level. Okay. So next would be eradication. Okay. So this is the final step in a disease control program. Okay. So you want to eliminate, you want to treat, no, the disease producing agent or the etiological agent from a defined population in a given area. Okay. So we have two types. No, we have the total eradication and the practical eradication. So from the names, no, of these terms, alam nyo na, no, total eradication, ibig sabihin, you will completely remove all the disease agents from the area of concern. Okay? So, for example, no, on a worldwide basis, yung smallpox, no, smallpox is the only disease agent that has been totally eradicated. Okay? And then next, practical eradication, yan, elimination of organisms from the reservoirs, no? So that's why it's practical, no? For example, yung practical eradication of canine rabies, no? So it has been accomplished in the United States, no? Kung saan they have eradicated rabies virus from the wildlife reservoir. I mean from the domestic animals. Pero yung eradication of rabies from the wildlife reservoir, it's still not achieved, no? Andun pa din. So practically speaking, no, mas okay naman talaga na eradicate natin yung rabies in domestic animals, no? Kasi when it comes to wild animals, it would be very difficult for you to control or for you to eradicate or to manage, no, yung eradication ng rabies in domestic animals. Okay, so now let's talk about the basic principles in prevention and control of zoonosis. So first, no, you have to understand the natural history of the disease. So you should know the relationship of its agent, the host, and the environment. So that's a One Health approach, no? Kasi you talk about the etiologic agent, no, the host, and the environment. Okay? So it is an interplay of factors in the classic epidemiological triad of disease causation. Okay? So second, determine the weakest link in the causation and aim control and prevention on this weakest link. Okay? So the concentration of forces against a single factor in the chain results in success of measures involving minimum expenses. So for example, no, the vector control. So in often is often very practical for most arthropod-borne infections, di ba? kaysa mag-treat ka, sometimes these vector-borne diseases walang treatment available, no? So it would be very practical for you to control yung vector. Okay? Okay, number three, identify the different foci and source of infection. So the establishment of disease surveillance no, is mandatory no, for any program of disease control or eradication. Okay, so again, yung disease surveillance, mga monitoring, no, we have discussed that from our last lecture. So ano ba yung mga different procedures in prevention and control of zoonosis? So number one, of course, elimination of agent, if applicable, no? Because again, there are some diseases or etiological agents that do not have specific or primary treatment. Okay? Second, prevention of its spread to new host para makontrol natin, para malimit natin yung transmission ng agent. And number three, increase the host's resistance. Okay? So how do we do that? No? So we have different measures no, towards the etiologic agent. Okay? So number one, if it's, well, it would be dependent no, on kung nasaan yung agent natin. So if it's in the reservoir of infection, so we can perform selective slaughter or depopulation. Okay? So for selective slaughter, okay, so this means eradication of infected individual. Okay? So this is practiced sa mga cases like the rabies, plague, brucellosis, ganyan, no? Kasi nga, hindi mo naman pwedeng, halimbawa, nagkaroon ng rabies outbreak in your barangay, no? So, selective slaughter lang, no? So, or selective culling lang. Yung mga animals that has been infected by rabies. So, yung mga na-expose or pwedeng kasama ng dogs, pwedeng i-monitor muna natin, no? Right? I-cage and i-monitor kung magpapakita ng mga clinical signs of rabies. Okay? Kasi it would be very impractical no kapag lahat naman papatayin natin or i-slaughter natin ng mga animals in that barangay kahit hindi naman na-expose, no? So that would be more of the population. So kung eradication ng reservoir is impossible, no? Your next choice would be to reduce the communicability of those infected. Okay? So the population would be substantial reduction in the susceptible population para mabawasan yung transmission of the diseases. Okay? So this would also include pati yung mga non-infected animals. So this can be observed no in domestic animals no like poultry and swine farms no. For example, nagkaroon ng influenza outbreak sa or yung avian influenza for example no in poultry, 'di ba? Kung nagkaroon ng case doon sa farm, edi lahat kailangang ma-slaughter, no? Kailangan ma-implement yung depopulation to the whole farm. Okay? So, ayan. So, we also need to treatment of reservoir if possible, no? To implement treatment of reservoir or limit its movement. No? So, how do we limit the movement? Ayan, meron ding isolation and quarantine in animals. Okay? And control of the known carriers. Okay? So when in transit from reservoir to susceptible host, these measures are aimed at the transmitting agents, no? Like, pwede kasing direct or indirect yung transmission, di ba? So kapag indirect, pwede yung mga vehicles, no? Yung mga ginagamit na sasakyan, especially sa mga farms, no? Pwedeng mga fomites, okay? Vectors, dusts, etc. Okay? And this would consist mostly of environmental control measures. Okay? All right, so points to keep in mind. Number one, the longer time the agent exists outside the reservoir, the more relatively effective are the measures. No? So this can be observed specifically in diseases like typhoid and cholera organisms that can be foodborne and waterborne pathogens. Second, yan, we have the more complicated the mode of transmission, the easier is it to control. Bakit kaya? No? Kasi usually yung mga zoonotic diseases that would involve multiple hosts or vectors, di ba? Sila yung mga may complicated na mode of transmission. Eh. So siyempre marami kang puwedeng i-target 'no, marami kang puwedeng, um, piliin na vectors kung saan puwede mong i-stop yung transmission ng mga agents 'no. So, this can be malaria, no, the fasciola, okay, marami kang puwedeng i-implement na control measures or preventive measures, okay? Number three, if the organism is highly adapted to the host, the disease will generally be more difficult. So this is oftenly observed no in viral diseases no they are the ones no mga viral zoonotic diseases, they are the ones that are more difficult to manage. Okay, so what are the different environmental control measures that we can implement? So number one, water purification. So this can be specific sa mga waterborne diseases, no? So as much as possible, no, we only consume yung mga drinkable or purified distilled water, no, yung malinis, alam nating malinis, okay? Number two is food and feed sanitation for animals as well, no? So this can be this can address no mga foodborne illnesses or foodborne diseases. Okay? Number three, sanitary disposal of human or animal wastes, as these wastes no can also transmit mga different diseases, no? Ano ba yung best example ng disease that that is caused by poor hygiene, no? We have the hepatitis E, no, which is present in areas na marumi, no, or does not practice proper hygiene, no? Wala silang, especially sa mga underdeveloped areas. Okay? Okay, number four, sanitary control of commercial or mass production of human food or animal feed. Okay, so syempre kapag hindi maganda yung supervision, okay, or yung management, no, hindi nababantayan na maayos, then pwedeng pagsimulan no ng um, transmission no ng mga different diseases or pwedeng pagmulan ng mga bacterial growth. Okay? So, ano 'to, mas ma-appreciate nyo siya when it comes to food safety, food hygiene, no? Number five, sterilization of medical and surgical equipment. Okay, number six, disinfection. And then number seven, special environmental control measures towards the mode of transmission of a particular disease. Okay? So these are all self-explanatory naman na, no? All right, next would be measures for the control or elimination of vectors. So number one, we have disinfection. This can also involve no, yung manual removal of mga external parasites. No? Number two is fumigation, mainly used to control or eliminate mga mga mosquito vectors. And then number three, insecticides. Okay, so we can use mga acaricides, no, larvicides, imagocides, adulticides, depending on the stage of parasite that you are controlling or eliminating. The number four, yes, we can also use repellents, no, but some repellents hindi ganun ka-effective na. Okay, so nagkakaroon na ng resistance. Okay, so we have to look for repellents na na dito mga proven and tested na. Okay? And then number five, mga different biological measures. Okay? All right. So now let's talk about measures towards the host. Okay? So we have non-specific measures first, no? We have yung adequate nutrition. So, syempre kapag malnourished yung yung individual, no, mababa yung kanyang resistensya, no? So they are more prone to get diseases. Okay? Prevention of overexertion and fatigue or mga stressful activities, but unfortunately we're not able to practice that, no? Especially sa VetMed siguro dahil medyo marami tayong inaaral talagang stressful, no? But of course, find time to de-stress yourselves, okay, para hindi bumaba yung inyong immune system. Okay? Number 3, prevention of crowding. Of course, kapag pumunta ka sa mga crowded places, there's a higher risk to acquire diseases, no? And some of these diseases can be zoonotic. Okay. Number 4, provision of good housing or shelter. Okay, very self-explanatory. Promotion of good personal hygiene. Oh, we all know that, no? Dissemination of health information. So yan, isa sa mga kulang siguro natin, yung pag-disseminate natin or pag-educate natin ng educating the public about, health information. That's why we have public health, no? Kasi para ma-disseminate natin or ma-educate natin yung public natin about, zoonotic diseases and other health-related problems. Okay? Improvement of man's socioeconomic or animal husbandry condition. Okay? And of course, kapag nakakaangat-angat na tayo sa buhay, no? Mas okay na um, we can practice, no, better hygiene, no, or um, we can have a better housing or shelter, okay, or we have a more um, um, health information can be more accessible, okay, at saka yung medical care that we get, okay, is better, okay. So that's why in the last item, no, ayan, provision of proper medical care facilities, hospitals, medical personnel, laboratory facilities, drugs, etc. So ayun lang, no, kasi yung minsan ang nakaka-afford lang ng mga ganito, no, medical care would be yung mga nakakaangat-angat talaga sa buhay, no, but the poor um, um, people, no, hindi afford yung mga ganitong medical care, no. So ayan, so siguro kung kailangan meron tayong improve pa, no, it would also be dapat i-include natin dito yung medical system natin in our country. Okay? All right. Second is specific measures. Yeah. So we have number one, yung immunization, no. So we have two kinds, no. If you remember from your immuno, no, or even in your virology, we have two: the active immunization and the passive immunization. So when we say active immunization, you develop an immunity after being exposed to an infection. So you got sick, no? And then this would trigger your immune system to produce antibodies. So this is long lasting, no? Sometimes lifelong yung immunization na nai-induce. Okay? And then number 3, we have the passive immunity or immunization. So you administer antibodies or giving antibodies to a disease rather than producing them through their own immune system. So this is limited, time limited, no? It can last for a few weeks or 2 months or mga 1 year, no? That's why we have our booster of our vaccines, no? To make sure na it's yung protection natin is still in effect. So who should be immunized? So of course, mga susceptible groups, okay? And then next, yung mga selection by probable risks, no? So yung mga age groups where susceptibility is high. So there are diseases that can be more severe when it comes to mga geriatric patients or yung mga senior citizens, for example, no? Yan. Or meron din mga diseases that can be more fatal when it comes to mga pediatric patients or mga younger ones. Okay? And then number 2, mga persons with high risks. So sino ba yung mga persons with high risks? Yan, yung mga may mga comorbidities or mga personnel that are frontliners, no? Nurses, physicians, vets, okay? Lab workers, etc. Okay? And then number 3, groups with high mortality. Okay? So, okay. So aside from immunization, we also have chemoprophylaxis. So this involves the use of drugs, chemicals, antibiotics, and antimicrobials. No, so this is given before the patient develops the disease to prevent yung occurrence ng sakit. Okay? So that's why it's prophylaxis. Okay? So parang preventive. Okay? Chemoprophylaxis. So remember, di ba, for example, yung leptospirosis, kapag maulan, tapos sinusuong mo yung baha, no? So a physician would usually require you to have doxycycline medication, no, as a chemoprophylactic agent. Okay? But again, this is different, no, from the treatment um, yung treatment regimen na sinasabi nila, no, or yung treatment dose. Okay? Sometimes it would be different from the dose that na ginagamit pag mga treatment na. Okay? Kasi nga it's only for chemoprophylaxis or preventive. Okay, so chemotherapy, no? So this is application of preventive and control measure. Um, it is basically a use of chemical to cure, no, a clinically recognizable disease, no, para ma-limit yung progress ng disease. Okay? So yung success ng mga measures that we mentioned earlier, no, would be dependent on number one, yan, the amount of money available. That's why it's very unfortunate for people, no, na who cannot afford itong mga medicines, no, mga drugs or yung medical care, no. So yan, so ang mga nakaka-afford lang is yung mga nasa middle class and above. Sometimes yung mga middle class pa nga is hirap pa din na makapag-afford or makapag-avail ng mga medical care services. Okay? Unlike in other countries, no, they have mga medical cards, no, and wherein they can go to hospitals and get discounts or get checkups for free, no, get medicines for free. Okay? So yan. So also the same thing with animals, no. Um, some pet owners or animal owners do not have the ability to spend money. Okay? So, hindi nila napapagamot yung kanilang mga pets. Okay? So, that's why we have to remind them, no, that owning a pet is a responsibility. Okay? So, we have to be responsible pet owners. Okay, next would be feasibility and acceptability of the measures formulated. Of course, no, baka naman kasi yung mga measures na ini-implement natin is impossible, no? So for example, you want to implement vaccination sa to obtain herd immunity, pero wala pa palang vaccine available or still under it's still ongoing yung production or pwedeng hindi pa na-check yung kanya efficacy, no? So, hindi pa feasible na mag-perform ng mass vaccination. Okay? Third one, yan, must give the most benefit with the least exposure. Okay? So, what are the general field measures or strategies for preventing and controlling zoonotic diseases? So, number one, detection and treatment of case in human beings. Okay. Number two, interruption of the pathway of infection from animals to people. So it is our job not to implement mga preventive and control measures. And we want to keep in mind, no, yung mode of transmission, yung importance ng mode of transmission ng disease. Because that's where we want to interrupt, no? So doon natin gustong putulin yung transmission ng mga agents into hosts. Okay? Yan. So same thing, no, yung sa mga sylvatic cycles, yung interruption of the pathway of infection from wildlife, and then yung transmission niya into wild domestic animals. Okay? So yung sylvatic at saka yung urban cycle. And then number four, interruption of man-to-man transmission. Okay? Okay, of course, we don't want that. Number five, partial control, local or regional elimination of infection in its animal reservoir. So kailangan this should be participated by even up to the barangay level kung pwede, no? And then number six, protection areas free from specific zoonotic diseases. Okay. So we have different international organizations that regulate animal diseases, no? We have yung World Organization for Animal Health or OIE, no? But this is originally known as the Office International des Epizootis. Okay. We also have the FAO, or the Food and Agriculture Organization, and the World Health Organization. Okay? We also have the CDC, or the Center for Disease Control. Hindi ko siya nabanggit dito or na-include, no? And so these are organizations, no, that regulate animal diseases and mga zoonotic diseases. Okay, so I have an assignment for you. Paki-screenshot na lang. So I want you to enumerate and describe different international organizations and national organizations or departments here in the Philippines that regulate zoonotic diseases. So write your answers in your journal. So your deadline would be before your exam number 1. And I think I can finish all the remaining topics today. So baka next week pwede na tayo mag-exam, but pag-isipan ko pa, no, next week or next week. Tingnan natin. Okay? All right. So clear? Do we have any questions from the first topic?
Wala naman po, Dok.
Okay, so now let's talk about One Health, okay, and emerging infectious diseases. Okay, so when we say infectious disease, no, or emerging infectious disease, or EID, this is disease that has increasing incidence, it has increasing geographic or host range, or has an increasing impact, no? So it can be merong new virulence, or pwedeng it has acquired resistance from antimicrobials. Okay? So we have categories, different categories of infectious diseases according to Fauci. So number 1 is established infectious disease. So these are endemic disease that have already occurred for a relatively long period of time. So this has allowed the disease to have a stable and predictable level of morbidity and mortality. So meron na tayong reference values, no, ng kanyang kung gaano ka-deadly itong sakit na to, or kung gaano ka bilis ma-transmit, no? Is it highly transmissible? Does it have a high mortality rate, or paano ba ito na-transmit, no? Mas mabilis ba ma-transmit through this type of transmission, etc., etc. So a good example of that would be your tuberculosis, okay, and drug susceptible malaria. Okay, so second is newly emerging infectious disease. Okay, so these are diseases that are recently detected in humans for the first time. So good example, no, would be your COVID-19. We also have yung Nipah virus during those times, no? I forgot the year. Is it 1998 ata, no? Yung Nipah virus. So during those times, yeah, first time siya na-discover. Okay? From transmission sa mga domestic pigs wherein they got the virus from wild bats. Okay? And meron din tayo yung SARS nung 2000 na. Okay? And then H1N1, even influenza these past few years. So commonly, no, for newly emerging infectious diseases, RNA viruses, yung mga RNA viruses that cause respiratory diseases are in this category, no, of infectious disease. Bakit kaya? Bakit kaya RNA viruses usually, as you can see, no, yan, COVID-19, Nipah virus, human metapneumovirus. So these are mga RNA viruses. And what's interesting is that these are respiratory infections. Okay? Bakit kaya RNA viruses yung common in this category? Do you have any idea or opinions? Baka naalala niyo pa from your virology, yung diniscuss sa inyo ni Doc Alan. Ano ba yung characteristic ng
Baka
RNA virus?
mutate po yung family nila.
Ano, Mr. Vince? Can you repeat your answer?
Mabilis mag-mutate, Dok.
Okay, very good, 'no, kasi RNA viruses are, um, well, generally, they are diseases that can, most of them, they cause respiratory diseases, and these are prone to mutations because they are unstable, no, mga RNA compared to DNA. Okay? So, for example, no, you have your orthomyxoviruses, di ba? These are viruses that can undergo antigenic drift and antigenic shift, no? And when this happens, di ba, magkakaroon ng mutation sa virus. So, after that, you have a new virus or you have a new infectious disease. Okay? Same thing with coronavirus, no? Di ba maya't maya meron tayong iba't ibang variant of coronavirus na lumalabas. We have the Delta, meron Lambda, Omicron, etc., etc. Okay? Because they are very prone to mutation. Okay? Alright, so next we have re-emerging infectious diseases. So this can be subclassified as first diseases that appears in new areas or new regions. No? So for example, yung West Nile virus in the Americas. Okay? And then second subclassification is existing diseases which became drug resistant. So dahil yung multi-drug resistant Mycobacterium tuberculosis, no, dahil may malpractice ng antibiotic use, kung ano-anong antibiotics yung ginagamit, mali-mali yung dosage, no, na bumili lang si farmer sa tindahan ng antibiotic, binentahan naman kahit walang reseta. Okay? So, ginamit lang ni farmer, binigay niya lang ng binigay. So, ngayon nagkaroon ng resistance, hindi na ma-effect yung antibiotic. So, nag-emerge itong bagong bacteria, no? Nagkaroon siya ng bagong damit, kumbaga. Okay? So, it's called as a re-emerging infectious disease. Okay, so infectious diseases, from 1940 to 2004, no, we have identified 335 EIDs already. Okay, so I think we have discussed this, no, in our first lecture. Okay, so ang peak niya would be in 1980s, wherein yan, notable emergence of HIV and AIDS. Okay, and 60% of these human infectious diseases are zoonotic, no? And 72% of them are from wildlife. Okay? So we can say, no, na usually destruction of habitats or natural habitats or our ecology na nagkaroon ng mga ecological imbalances. That's why nagkaroon ng um, occurrences of these zoonotic diseases. Okay? So we share, no, genes, physiology, microorganisms, and environments with animals. Kasi, no? So we have a shared susceptibility of there is a shared susceptibility of humans and animals. So the humans, they are growing and expanding into new geographic areas. Okay, there is urbanization, no? And because of this urbanization, kakaroon ng deforestation, we use, no, yung mga remaining land areas. Okay? We are getting closer to the wild animals. Okay? So as a result, no, we live in close contact with wild and domestic animals, both livestock and pets. Okay? So of course, it would not be possible to stay away or avoid animals, no, because again, they play important or significant roles in our lives, di ba? Source of food, livelihood, companionship, education, sport, etc., etc. And this close contact, no, um, this close contact with animals and together with their environment, it provides a gateway, no, for diseases to be transmitted between animals and people. So aside from this, no, there's climate change, land use like deforestation, intensive farming practices, and these practices, no, have caused environmental disturbances and habitat destruction. So this situation, no, has contributed to zoonotic disease transmission. No? Also, human movement, no, like traveling, no, punta kayo sa ibang bansa, ganyan, di ba? Especially recently, 'di ba, sobrang naging in yung pagta-travel, no? Travel goals nga sabi nila, 'di ba? So, aside from that, no, traveling, international travels, or even domestic travels, no, movement of animals and animal products have also increased international travel and trade. And this has resulted into higher risk of spreading diseases across the world. So with this close relationship between humans and animals, no, we have established One Health, no. So One Health was established to address the issues that I mentioned earlier. So ano nga ba yung One Health? Meron na bang familiar sa atin sa One Health? Kindly raise your hands. Wala. Hindi kayo nakikinig sa sa Vet Week natin. Si Mr. ano lang, Quidas lang, ang familiar sa One Health. Yeah, Miss Ortiz, Miss Cruz. Oh, sila lang. Wala na talagang familiar sa One Health. Okay. So anyway, when we say One Health, this is a collaborative, multi-sectoral, and transdisciplinary approach. So yung keyword dyan natin is yung transdisciplinary, collaboration. Okay? Yan. So they work at different levels, no? Local, regional, national, and global. And their primary objective is to achieve optimal health outcomes that recognizes yung relationship between people, animal, plants, and their shared environment, no? One Health, ibig sabihin lahat tayo interconnected. So yung approach natin is dapat lahat inclusive, no? Included yung people, humans, no, animals, plants, and the environment that we live in. Okay? So this is an integrative effort, okay, of different disciplines, no? That's why it's transdisciplinary. Kasi nga you include different fields or different aspects. Okay? So ano ba yung common One Health issues, no, or problems that they address? So number one, yan, mga zoonotic diseases. Number two, antimicrobial resistance. Three is food safety and food security, mga vector-borne diseases, and environmental contamination. And kahit sabihin mo na for example, no, environmental contamination, so most likely environmentalist lang dapat yung involved dyan, no? But no, no, because later on, pati humans and animals can also be involved in this kind of situation. Okay? So I'll give you an example later. Okay, so inclusivity. All right, so that's one of the keywords, no, or One Health approach. So many institutions, no, around the world, for example, yung CDC or Center for Disease Control, they use a One Health approach. So they involve experts in humans, okay, mga physicians or doctor ng mga tao, no, animal experts like veterinarians, environmental health, no, mga biologists or botanists, zoologists, and other relevant disciplines and sectors in monitoring and controlling public health threats. Okay? So these experts, no, they need to communicate, they need to collaborate, no, and coordinate activities. So of course, no, by promoting collaboration across all sectors, a One Health approach can achieve the best health outcome, not only for us humans, but also for animals, for plants, in our shared environment. Okay? So ito, nakalagay ng inclusivity. We have human health experts like doctors, nurses, public health practitioners, epidemiologists. Sa animal health experts, we have veterinarians, mga agriculturists. Environmental health experts, we have ecologists, marine biologists, etc. And others, no? Even others like law enforcement, policymakers, even pet owners, no, can be involved, no, in in One Health. Okay? So here's an example, no, we have yung poisoned sea otters in California. So there was a report kasi in 2007, no, there was they reported 11 dead sea otters around Monterey Bay in California. And upon necropsy, no, they found yellow gums and swollen liver. Okay? So they tested for common diseases that can affect the liver, but they did not find anything. Okay? So they start exploring other possibilities and they finally found a clue, no? So a positive lab test revealed that the sea otters had died of something called the microcystine. So a microcystine, no, this is a toxin given off by a type of phytoplankton called cyanobacteria. So this is also commonly known as the blue-green algae. Okay, so with that, um, they thought no that the blue-green algae would naturally occur in fresh water and not in marine water where sea otters live. No, kasi very ironic, di ba? Kasi blue-green algae, they would naturally occur only in fresh water. So the question is now is how did the sea otters get poisoned? No? So since they have a One Health investigation team, no, so they invited scientists from different departments, no, like the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, California Department of Public Health, U.S. Geological Survey, and State Water Resources Control Board. Okay, and even local universities and organizations came together, no, para to investigate the case. So what they did is they sampled water from freshwater and marine water sources along the Central California coast. No, so yung mga connecting bodies of water sa California coast were also tested with to find no with the objective to find the source of toxin. So ultimately, no, the team found that the answer was in a lake, no, a freshwater lake that drained into a creek flowing into the river which wherein this river would flow into the sea at the Monterey Bay. Okay? So napag-connect nila yung mga dots, no? Na yun pala nanggaling pala siya sa ibang bodies of water, na fresh water. Okay? And so the lake had recently been affected by a large harmful algal bloom or HAB na tinatawag nila. So when we say harmful algal bloom, there is a rapid growth of algae which can cause harm to animals, people, and the environment. Okay? So the hypothesis was that otters had eaten shellfish, no? So, di ba naturally they would consume mga shellfishes. So since nagkaroon ng concentrated toxin doon sa mga shellfish, so it was able to cause disease, no? Sa mga sea otters or yun nga, nakapag-cause nga ng death sa mga sea otters. Okay? So with that kind of approach, no, CDC has launched the One Health Harmful Algal Bloom System or OHABS, OHHABS in 2016. So after more than 2 years of working closely with state and their partners to design and test it. Okay, so this is a voluntary reporting system, which allows the state and the territorial public health agencies and their designated environmental health, their animal health partners to report cases of harmful algal blooms. Okay, so since itong harmful algal blooms, no, they can have serious effects on the health of humans, animals, and our environment. No? So it's very important to understand and prevent HABs. No? So it will require continued cooperation from different fields using an interdisciplinary approach, One Health approach. Okay? And this is what they implemented no in the sea otter poisoning in California. Kaya nagkaroon sila ng ganito. So with this, no, it would be very easier for them to point an organization or a group that can monitor or investigate cases like this. Okay? So yan. So aside from that, no, mas maganda yung naging effect, no, yung kasi integrated yung knowledge no from different sectors no may doktor ng tao, may mga veterinarians, may mga environmentalists. Okay? So clear ba sa atin yung One Health? Do you have any questions? Walang questions?